In this video, I'm going to show you how to run our toolpaths for our cutting board. The first thing that we need to do is we need to secure a flash drive from your instructor that has all of the post processors as well as the tool library needed for our shop. So once you have your flash drive, put it into your computer and you should see that it will pop up. And on this flash drive I have some other folders in there, but we're looking for a folder that says Tool Database as well as My Post P. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to come back to Aspire, go File, open Application Data folder, and inside here you'll also have the preloaded My Post P as well as the preloaded tool databases. What we're going to do is we are going to select the tool database and My Post P, and we are going to drag it from the flash drive into this folder right here. What we want to do is we want to replace the files in that destination so it overwrites any of the post processors that came with the program, and it overwrites them with the post processors that we use on our machinery. So once we are done with that, we can close those windows and we need to restart Aspire. So I'm going to close it down, I'll save that, and I open up Aspire again. Open that existing file and open up my cutting board. Now all of our tools and our post processors have been loaded into Aspire. What I want to do next is I'm going to come over to Toolpaths, and the Toolpaths menu has a kind of funny habit of closing down when you least expect it. So to make sure that this stays open, what we can do is we can select that tiny little pin where it says auto hide, and that will lock it in place from going away from us. So the first thing I want to do is I want to be able to engrave this Wildcats right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a V-carving toolpath right there. And what this will do is this will follow the lines with our 90-degree V-carve bit. What we also want to do is we want to make sure that we put a flat depth in there, and what this flat depth will do is if the shoulders of our bit don't contact this line, this vector right here, the furthest it will go down is however our flat depth is. And for this instance, what we want to do is we want to set our flat depth at 0.125. The tool that we're going to be using, what we can do is we can hit select right there, and I am going to go and find the V-bit 90-degree 0.25 or the 1/4 inch that's set up for Corian. So we'll select that, hit select right there, and then we can select calculate. Oh, before we select calculate, what we need to do is we need to select the vectors that we want to V-carve. So we know it's selected when it's pink. What we'll do then is we hit calculate then, and you can see we've got our V-carve toolpath set out from there. Now to get back to our 2D view, up on the top left, we want to select 2D view from the 3D view. And the next thing we want to do is we want to create our little juice groove that goes around there. And this is also going to be done using our V-carve bit. So under the preview toolpaths right here, I'm going to hit close. Instead of our V-carve, I'm going to use a profile toolpath. Now we are going on a profile toolpath, but we are going to be using a V-carving bit so that it is the cross section is the shape of a V. So I'll select my profile toolpath. My start depth is going to be 0 inches. I want the V for my V-carve to be down 1/8 of an inch, which is 0.125. And for our tool, instead of using a 1/4 inch end mill, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit select, and I'm going to select again the V bit. Don't do the end mill, but we want to do the V bit. That's 90 degrees, 1/4 inch for Corian. So we'll select that. Hit select right there. And for our machining vectors, we have 3 different options. We have an outside, which will run the bit on the outside. That's what we're going to do for this profile right here to be able to cut it out. The second one would be on the inside. That's going to be for this profile right here. We want to go on the inside for that hole. The third option we have is an on, and what that's going to do for us is that's going to follow this line right here perfectly all the way around at 1/8 of an inch or 0.125 down. So for the rest of these, we don't need to do a separate last path or add tabs for this one, but what we do want to do for this one is add a ramp to the toolpath. What a ramp is going to do is, instead of dropping our mill bit straight down, to make it easier on the machine and easier on the bits, we're going to add ramps to it, which will ease our bit into that cut. So before we hit calculate, what we want to do is make sure that we do not have wildcat selected. If I were to hit calculate right now, what it would do is it would trace all of these lines here and we would have an outline of that. That's not what we want because we already V-carved that. What we would like to do though is we want to select this vector right here that goes around the outside edge of our cutting board. So after we select that, then we can hit calculate, and now on our previews toolpath, or our previews window, we can see that we have that line done right there. Alright, so we'll hit close on that one, and we'll go back to our 2D view. Now I want to go back and I want to review the thickness of our material. So we're going to come over to our set job dimensions and origin to double check the thickness of our material. With our Corian, what we are going to do is we are not going to cut all the way through. We want to come up just a little shy and leave a tiny little bit remaining so that our part will stay in place, and also so that it can still be held. Corian can be a little bit brittle, so we are going to leave 0.02 or 20 thousandths of an inch left on our cut. And we want to double check and make sure that our thickness is 0.467, which is the thickness of our Corian. So I will go back and I'll hit cancel. And our next cut is going to be a profile toolpath. So we'll select that. And our start depth is going to be at 0. Our cut depth for this is going to be that 0.467 or 467 thousandths. And we are going to subtract 20 thou from that, and we wind up with 0.447. So our cut depth is going to be 0.447 inches. For our tool, we are going to select a 1/4 inch end mill. So for that, we're going to go underneath our end mills. We have our 1/4 inch Corian end mill right there. And then what we will do is we will hit select for that one. And for this next toolpath that we're going to be doing, we're going to be doing our circle right here because we want to cut out this hole. So for that one, we want to go on the inside. And when we cut this, we want to have a climb direction. So our initial cut with our CNC routers, climbing is going to be a little bit easier on our machines and our router bits. However, it makes a better cut using a conventional toolpath. So what we're going to do is we are going to be doing a roughing toolpath using a climb. So it's going to climb around. And then our separate last pass to get a nice finishing cut, we are going to reverse the direction. So it's going to be a conventional direction in the second thing. So again, we want to have an inside left. Our direction is going to be climb. Then for our second pass, we're going to do a separate last pass with an allowance of 10 thou or 0.01, and we are going to reverse that direction. So you're going to see that our machine is going to cut around this way, and then it's going to come back and it's going to reverse that around. And again, for this, we want to be nice and easy on our mill bits. So we are going to add ramps to the toolpath. For this one, we can just make it an inch. All right, before we hit calculate, we want to select our circle right there. And when we hit calculate, you can see that we have those two tool paths right there. The last thing that we want to do is we want to be able to cut out our cutting board. Right? So we are going to go back to our profile toolpath, And this is going to be very similar to our circle, right? We're just going to be on the outside. So we're going to go through and we're just going to double check. Our cut depth is 0.447, which is 20 thou less than the material thickness, which is 0.467. We are going to be using our 1/4 inch end mill with our Corian settings. Instead of being on the inside, this is going to be on the outside. We are going to climb first, and then we are going to do a separate last pass at 10 thou, or 0.01 inches, and we want to make sure that we are reversing that direction. And finally, to make sure that we are being easy on our mill bits, or our router bits, we want to add ramps to that tool path. We'll just do a distance of 1 inch for that. And we want to make sure that only our outside profile line is going to be selected. We don't want to be doing anything with that circle right there, so just that one. We'll hit calculate, and now we have all of our tool paths created. What we want to do is we want to next preview all of our tool paths, and you'll see that we V-carved out our Wildcats, our text. We put in our nice little juice groove right there, and we cut out our hole right there, as well as our outside profile of our cutting board. So the last thing that we need to do is you need to double check with an instructor that everything has been done properly. And the final thing that we need to do is we need to export this, or we need to post-process this in a file format that our CNC routers are going to be able to recognize and be able to use. So to be able to do that, we want to select close. And remember from before, these two tool paths, these are using our V-carve bits. These two are using our end mill bits. So what we want to do is we want to select our two V-carve bits, and we are going to save that tool path. And you may get an error right away that no post processor is selected. What we want to do is we want to select that drop-down menu, go down to ShopBot Arc Inch Spindle Control. So we'll select that. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that these two get combined into one file. So it defaults to our selected toolpath, but we don't want to do that. We want all of our visible toolpaths to one file. Now notice up top here, when I have selected toolpath, I only have one toolpath to be saved. What I want to do is I want to select my visible toolpaths to one file, and I have two toolpaths to be saved. So it's going to combine both this toolpath and this toolpath into one file and make it faster and a little bit easier for us to machine this out. So then what I can do is I can save that toolpath, and I'll just put this on my flash drive, the same one that I brought in those post processors and stuff like that. How I want to name this is I'm going to put your last name, but for this one I'll just put Wildcats. I'm going to do the number of profiles, so this is going, or the number of the toolpath, so this is my first toolpath, so Wildcats 1. And then we want to have a description of what tool I'm going to be using. So for this one, I'm going to be using a V-carve. And the reason we do this is when you bring this up in the other computer, we have no idea, we can't see any of the settings that are inside of your file. So you have no idea that you're going to be using a V-carve bit for this. And to make it easier on yourself, what you can do is you can label your file names, your name, what order you need to be doing your toolpaths in, and then finally what bits you need. So we'll hit save on that. And then finally for this last one, what we will do is we'll select these two. Before I post-process this, I just want to point out something. If you get an error right here saying that the visible toolpaths use different tools and the selected post-processor does not support tool changing, what that means is either A, you have selected the wrong toolpaths to link together, or what could have happened is, let's say that these were supposed to be both using the same bit. You accidentally selected the wrong bit in your toolpath. To be able to change that bit, what you can do is you can right-click on that toolpath, select Edit, and you can get back in here. I don't want to change my bits though, because I have everything done properly. So I'm going to select those two tool paths, and I'm going to go to save the tool paths. Again, make sure you have visible toolpaths one file selected. Make sure that we've got the ShopBot arc inch spindle control selected, and we're going to save that toolpath. And again, your name, so Wildcats, what number in order of this toolpath is going to be, so it's going to be number 2, and what mill bit or router bit you're going to be using. And so I'm going to be using an end mill for this. And we click save. Once that's done, we'll be able to go into the wood shop and be able to cut out our cutting board.